Sunset Boulevard, Olfabriken, DPA microphones.
I haven't found there's any one particular way to write a song, and so I'll try anything that I can to try to write one. But I get inspiration from a lot of different musical traditions, mostly American music in the States, from blues and jazz and folk and reggae and punk and Tin Pan Alley and gospel and country and the list goes on and on. There's so many. And I'm lucky enough to live in Austin, Texas, so there's music to be seen and had every day of the week, everywhere. And so it's a very fertile environment for a musician. And but in writing, I think I'm always trying to find how do you say what you're trying to say the simplest? How do you distill it to the thing that you really want to say, that you really want to communicate? I'm very simple, and I live in a very complicated world. There's so much going on. We're animals that evolved for a much simpler life than the world that we find ourselves in now, and so I guess artists try to make sense of the world that they live in and try to combine all these diverse elements, ideas, and situations. And it's just trying to use music as a tool, try to understand the world, try to find a way to fit, find a way to sit in it. I have a really high expectation of what music can be, because early on I was lucky enough to stumble across music from the turn of the century, from the turn of the last century, old blues and gospel and country music from 1920, 1930. And that music was really important to me because it exists outside of the music business. And there was a lot of the music that was recorded, small race labels, individual people with wire recorders and stuff like that, just going out to fields and listening to music that was already existing there and documenting it. Because that's music that is so different than the music that we hear on the radio now, usually the music that is used to sell trucks and clothing and be part of the great consumer economy. It was music that people used to stay alive in difficult times. So that's what I would like. I would like for it to be a tool to help survive these weird times that we're in, even if it's just psychically. Most of my writing comes from things that I've seen or people that I know, places I've been, situations that I've been in. Sometimes it's a little bit harsher than my own personal experiences, but that's what storytelling is about. Storytelling is usually, the best stories are about normal people in heroic situations.
Among other things, you're known for playing the saw. How is your approach to this instrument?
I was on the streets of Amsterdam and I watched somebody play the musical saw for the first time, and I was captivated because it's such a vocal instrument. It's good at playing all the notes that are in between the keys of the piano. Most of the instruments that I've become really attached to, the harmonica, the slide guitar, the saw, are vocal. We experience them in the same way that we experience voices. And that's cool for me. I think we're all hardwired to hear voices. It's part of our basic programming, and that I think that's where the emotion is.
So how is it to play here compared to a folk festival in the States or?
Well, there's something about this festival that is very similar to another folk festival that I go to, the Kerrville Folk Festival, and that is that it's been going on for almost 40 years. And so there's a whole generation of people that grew up at the festival that are now participants in it. And so there's a sense of ownership that the patrons here have for the festival. And they've distilled it into the experience that they want it to be, which means that it's run really well. They take care of the artists. They know that gets the best possible show is to make sure that they're not suffering more than they already are. And it's a lot cooler here because in Kerrville it's like 100 degrees or so it's much more comfortable. Okay. I can deal with the rain. So we're going to do a song for you about the heat in Texas. The song is called 105, which I think translates to about 41 degrees. which I think it still is at home, and it has been for about 2 months. So. At 9 a.m. was 105, and I started looking for a place to hide. Well, I went down to the edge of town, right down to the riverside. Well, I got down to the riverside, and there was a man in a coat and tie, even though it was 105. Behind a brand new 10-foot barbed wire fence, his attorney by his side. And he said, your river is spoken for. This river is spoken for. This river don't belong to you no more. Well, I went back to my old neighborhood. Was a hole in the ground where my house once stood. A 10-ton truck, a jackhammer crew, and a pile of splintered wood. And sure enough, right there he stood. That man in a coat and tie was 105. And he said, on these remains, we're gonna build 10 lanes, a big box on each side. And he said, this land is spoken for. This land is spoken for. This land don't belong to you no more. About 9 p.m. was 110, and I didn't want to see that man again, so I curled up and died. And when I got to St. Peter's gates, guess who was by his side? That man in a coat and tie. There was a padlock on the promised land, a wad of cash in St. Peter's hand as he waved goodbye. And he said, your wings are spoken for. Your wings are spoken for. You don't belong anymore. So I turned around and I went back down where the river drained through a hole in the ground. I got my own little pyre on the lake of fire. At least I can call it mine. 9 a.m. was 199.
Boom.
This has been a Morris music production.